when we blow it up as if that's the situation that every single time happens to black people, we do ourselves a disservice. Because let me tell you, the first thing you're doing when black people get pulled over, and I'm telling the media this, when black people get pulled over and they have a heightened sense of fear and angst, that's when bad decisions are made. Okay? That's when decisions are made that in panic. That's what happened in the Wright case when he pulled away from a police officer. That's what we do in panic. That's a flight or fight type of reaction to things. So this irresponsible coverage of the media where this is always the case without delving into the specifics of when this happened.
Such a false message.
Yes, and it's a dangerous false message.
I'm Wesley Hunt.
I'm Wrendon Hunt.
And you're in the hunt.
Have an interesting one to talk about today, and a very difficult topic for me to talk about. We're going to talk about getting home alive. So we've gotten a lot of feedback, and being black Americans and being people who have a voice, it's important for us to talk about touchy topics, hard topics for us to talk about. It's important that we talk about those things because this is what we want our viewer to hear about. We want you to hear different perspectives on how we view this country and what we've experienced.
And I want to add a little bit to that. Wrendon and I are not going to run from any tough conversations. In fact, that's why we started this. To make you know that what we talk about, it's real to us, it's thoughtful. You may not agree, or you may agree with some or a little or none of it. What we want to make sure, though, is that we're speaking from a place of love. We're talking about this, I think, in a nuanced way, given our background and given our history. We aren't trying to upset anybody. We just want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
That's what we want to have, an open conversation. And I want people to take away from that. I really want you to take away from that. This is not the idea of us trying to pick sides or lambast one side or the other. This is a conversation that's difficult, but also needs to be had.
Yes. And I'll tell you why that conversation is particularly difficult. I've been pulled over before for driving while black.
So have I.
I'll tell you a little bit about that. It's also difficult because I'm thinking, not only do I want to make it home, not only do I want my brother to always make it home, I want my son to make it home too. What am I going to teach him? How am I going to coach him? And how do you get home alive? Because I'll tell you, there's a piece of me that says,
I want everybody to get home alive.
I want everybody to get home alive. I really do. And there's a piece of me that says, we can have these discussions, we can have these arguments, we can talk about what cops did wrong, this, that, and the other. That's a conversation that's better had above ground.
Yes.
So first and foremost, how do we get home alive? So the first one I'd like to talk about is Lieutenant Nazario, Caron Nazario of the Virginia National Guard. And the video is coming out right now of him getting pulled over for a routine stop, pepper sprayed, drug out of the car, handcuffed on the ground. That video is coming out right now, and people are seeing it. The thing that I think is really interesting, and once again, not here to pick a side on this, the timing of this video is interesting to me. That happened in December of 2020. Okay? And we're releasing it right now in the height of everything that's happening in the Chauvin trial, okay? So just something to think about, agendas and motives and why things happen. I'm not going to pick a side. I'm not going to take a side on this, but just something to think about. This happened in December of 2020.
So when you and I first watched the video that was put out there, it's also a cautionary tale to when you're talking about motives and agendas and whatnot. When we first saw that video, I was incensed.
Yeah.
You were incensed.
Yeah.
Based on the video that was sent out to the world to see.
Yes.
A very truncated version of the full story.
Yes.
And you and I watched that, and that was absolutely enraging to me.
There were two videos. There's the video from the body cam, and let me be the first to say, cops should have body cams. If you turn them off, it should be punitive in some way. This is how we create the story. This is how we have the narrative of what actually happens in these situations. It's very important that we have that story and that we have that narrative.
And the full story.
It's extremely important. There were two videos. One video was the video from body cam. Another video was the video that the lieutenant took himself in the car. Okay. I first saw the body cam video. You know me.
Yeah.
My blood pressure does not raise very often.
No, it doesn't.
I was pissed when I saw that.
Me too.
Completely incensed. Because what I saw from the perspective of that video, and every single one of these videos that comes out, what I'm thinking in my mind is, how would I have handled the situation? And then the second piece I'm thinking is, well, how do I coach and teach my children to handle that situation? And hopefully those end up becoming one and the same, but that's what I'm thinking when any of these videos come out. So when that video came out, from that perspective, all I could see was a cop yelling.
Using phrases like ride the lightning.
First of all,
Using
Officer Joe Gutierrez.
Yeah, that guy. Ride the lightning. You should be scared.
You should be scared to get out of the car.
Okay.
And then the thing that really got me as an officer in the armed forces, okay, and as somebody who's gone through that training, the fact that he would say, "What are you, a corporal, a private?" Lieutenant Nazario said, "No, I'm a lieutenant." So Officer Gutierrez was trying to have a snide remark to
his rank
even, right?
Yeah.
So it's either one of two things. Either he knew his rank and he was trying to demote him, or he didn't know and he assumed that was his rank because he's black. Both of them are pretty bad.
Both of them are bad, but also let's keep in mind too that this officer is Hispanic.
It's Hispanic. It's Hispanic.
So let's not be dishonest here. It's
Sure.
another minority group.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people want to gloss over that fact.
No.
Because it's expedient, but he's Hispanic.
He's Hispanic. Yes. And so,
And the guy in the car, the lieutenant, is half Hispanic and half black.
yes, Nazario is not Jenkins.
No, one of them Jenkins boys, Vulcan.
So I'm watching this video, and then you see that piece, and then you see him pepper spray him, drag him out of the car, and that's all you see from that perspective in the video.
Yeah.
So I saw that, I sent it to you, and the thing that I thought when I first saw that is, this is the first one of these instances that I've ever seen where I'm like, oh my gosh, the guy handled it exactly the way that I would.
Yeah.
And there are two things that he did that I actually think are completely in bounds, and in many ways I applaud him for doing it, because I've felt this before. When he got pulled over, he went to a lit gas station. It was late at night. He went to a lit gas station to make sure that there were cameras, that people could see him, that everybody could be seen. I applaud him for doing that. Turning on the camera so that there's evidence of what's happening, I think that's totally in bounds. Given what we see in the media, which I would argue the media is putting this up to be something that it's not, if you look at the numbers of when these things are actually happening. Given what we see in the media, I completely understand those two reactions. However, when I watched the video that he took, that's not the way I would have handled that.
So what was it, about 2 days later? I sent you a link of the full video from the very beginning. That tells a different story.
It tells a very different story. And
let's be clear, this doesn't justify that officer's remarks. Gutierrez, it doesn't justify his behavior. I think he was a hothead. I think he's a loose cannon, and I think he should have left the force.
yeah.
However, there's more to the story.
To your point, let's be crystal clear. Gutierrez should not be a police officer.
Yes.
I want to reiterate and hit on that. What he did was beyond wrong in an abuse of power. Mm-hmm. However, when we talk about getting home alive, what I'm saying is I don't believe that the lieutenant did everything he could to get home alive.
So when you look at the very beginning of the video, when he first pulls into that gas station, how many times was he told to put his hands out the vehicle
and turn off his car? And he didn't.
Now, the reason why that's important, and the reason why it's important for you to turn off your car, is because at that moment, the law enforcement officer is making calculations in his mind. Is this person going to drive away? What's the next move? Is he reaching for a weapon in his vehicle, etc.? Because the law enforcement officer wants to get home alive, too.
Yes.
This conversation is not just about the citizen getting home alive. It's also about the police officer getting home alive.
Yeah.
He was told repeatedly, he was given orders repeatedly to put his hands out the window and turn off his vehicle, and he did not do it.
Yes.
We were in the military. We went to West Point. We understand orders. We talked about being plebes at West Point and understanding our 4 responses. We get all this. The fact that this officer did not obey these very basic commands early on is what really worsened the situation. Because then paranoia and fear begins to set into the minds of the law enforcement officers that's pulling you over in the first place. If you follow the instructions quickly, you turn your vehicle off and you put your hands out the window immediately, they know you're complying and it puts them at ease.
And Wesley, this is what I want to reiterate from what you said at the very beginning. This is coming from a place of love. This is coming from the fact that I want to see that guy make it home
alive.
That's where this is coming from. So me criticizing the way that he handled it, I just want to make sure that when I show my son that video, that I can say, hey, this is something that you could have done to de-escalate this so that you can make it home alive.
That's the mission here. CDC mission.
And what he did, the question is were those actions de-escalating the situation?
No.
No, it wasn't. Like they told you to do something and you didn't do it, and that was antagonizing the
multiple times.
The authority figure.
Multiple times.
And continuing to question and say, well, why do you want to do this? You have been given an order to do something. They have a gun. Do it. You've done the smart thing of going to a place where you are in a lit area. You are recording this. Okay. The second it's out of bounds, let's take care of this. Let's get legal representation. The body cams are on. Let's take care of this. But the concern for me is, as much as I thought that was the hallmark example when I saw it the first time.
Yes, it ended up.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
And then there's an even deeper thought in a further investigation of, there's always a question of why do you pull somebody over? Look, whenever we get pulled over, we have no clue. It's like, hey, I bought a new car. That car could have been lifted. Like, you don't know. So he was pulled over. He had his temporary tags that were taped up in his back window, and he had a tinted window. So maybe they saw him, maybe they don't. Who knows? Like, I don't know, right? But when you're pulled over, there's this overarching idea of how do we get back to a place in this country where we have overarching trust in the system as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you a way we don't get back to it. It's not by blowing up every single piece of every negative story that happens and not really looking at the data and understanding the frequency of when things happen in our country. There were over 20 million traffic stops
20 million
that happened in this country last year. And once again, I grew up in this same place where it's like, oh my gosh, if you get pulled over by a white cop, oh my gosh. 20 million traffic stops. What happened in that video and other videos, those things are rare.
Extremely rare. Extremely rare, Wrendon. It teeters on statistical impossibility. Rare. That's what we're getting at. And just because you see the same videos over and over and over again, you got to take a look at how many, those are just traffic stops, by the way.
Yeah.
Think about how many interactions just in general that our citizens have with our law enforcement officers across this country daily,
yes,
outside of traffic stops on top of that.
Yeah. And when we blow this up, when we blow it up as if that's the situation that every single time happens to black people, we do ourselves a disservice. Because let me tell you, the first thing you're doing when black people get pulled over, and I'm telling the media this, when black people get pulled over and they have a heightened sense of fear and angst, that's when bad decisions are made. Okay? That's when decisions are made that in panic. That's what happened in the Wright case when he pulled away from a police officer. That's what we do in panic. That's a flight or fight type of reaction to things. So this irresponsible coverage of the media where this is always the case without delving into the specifics of when this happened.
Such a false message.
Yes, and it's a dangerous false message.
So I've been pulled over at Fort Hood, driving from Fort Hood to Austin multiple times while in my uniform. Okay, I have. There were times that it was certainly a DWB situation, driving while black. There were other times where I had a lead foot on I-35. I will admit that. I was absolutely speeding, or I absolutely was not doing the right thing.
Did you have a left foot, or was it that crocodile on that boot was a little heavy?
It's a gator.
It's
a gator.
The gator was a little bit heavy.
Gator.
Take some boudin out of that.
I'm glad you like my boots.
They're beautiful.
Because I had a lead foot. I had a lead gator foot, but I had a lead foot. And Wrendon, I'm not saying that it's an N of 20. I didn't get pulled over like 20 times, but I would say during my time in the military, I probably got pulled over once a year. So like all in 8 to 12 times. Yeah. Okay. I never had a bad experience. Never. Not one. I saw a Facebook post of a black woman who's a West Point graduate who's a year ahead of me. She made this long post about how a cop pulled up behind her and she felt scared and she began to feel nervous and kind of described her thoughts and her feelings. And I thought to myself, that's so sad to me that you feel that way, and I get why, given what you're seeing every day.
Yeah, and that's what's like. Here's the thing, Wesley. I have that feeling too, and I know that it's irrational.
Yeah. So when I was talking to some of my white friends, they have that feeling too. Newsflash. White people, white males, they get a little antsy too whenever they get pulled over by law enforcement. See, I didn't really understand that from that perspective, actually.
I've never had that conversation, so that's interesting that...
Wrendon, I was kind of shocked. He's like, no, Wesley, I too put my hands on 10 and 2, and I too try to be as courteous as I can to a law enforcement officer because I'm kind of concerned too.
Yeah.
I'm worried about my safety as well. What did I do wrong?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that sometimes we don't have the conversations with people who could enlighten us the most?
It's interesting.
It's fascinating.
It's not just us. And so I kind of pulled some numbers, and I kind of want to talk about this, to kind of go to your point about what's actually happening versus what you think it's happening, or based on what the media is perpetuating.
Sure.
So far, in 2021, there have been a total of 52 police shootings toward black people. 52. For white people, 109. So double that.
Yeah, but disproportionate to the population.
Got it. But that's not what you would think would be actually based on what you see on TV.
What's conveyed in the media at all.
And then unarmed, 3 black people. Unarmed, 5 white people.
Yeah.
There have been more unarmed white people killed by police officers than black people. Again, to your point, disproportionate due to the population. I get that. My argument is that I would have never imagined that those are the numbers.
Oh, I'd have thought there was thousands.
Exactly.
Thousands of thousands based on the media coverage that we get in this.
Exactly. And that's to your point, that's very dangerous. Yeah. People are dying right now because of this misinformation war.
Yeah.
People right now are losing their businesses because in Minnesota they are tearing apart the city.
Yeah.
because of misinformation.
Yeah.
Because we are literally taking the worst situations that we are seeing and putting them on repeat over and over again across all social media platforms, played 24/7 on all news media outlets, and it's very dangerous to our citizens, and to our law enforcement officers.
Because it's adjusting our psyche. It's adjusting our psyche to really be conditioned to believe that is the norm all of the time.
And it's not even.
It's not.
It's not even close to being the norm.
It's not.
So I also want to talk a little bit about the importance of assuming responsibility. We talk about personal responsibility a lot on this show. A lot of people hear this and they think, well, I don't want to get into victim blaming on this whole thing, but it's not entirely the cop's fault. It's not entirely the citizen's fault.
Yeah,
and
in any
we aren't
situation.
willing to accept a certain level of responsibility for everybody, and everybody's taking this whole thing, we're just going to keep on butting heads, and we're not actually going to resolve the problem.
Wesley, Joe Gutierrez, cops got to do better too. This guy was one of your own.
Fact.
Cops got to do better
Fact.
too. Straight
He's
up.
got to do better.
He had a partner
You
with
got to
him.
police your own.
He had a partner with him that watched him do that. Okay, that watched him say, "You're about to ride the lightning." If you ever said, "We're about to ride the lightning" in any context,
Like, no.
I don't know what I'd do because you're bigger than. I wouldn't hit you.
Well, you know.
I'd sternly say with a finger in your face, we are not using that term, Wesley Parrish Hunt.
Got the middle name too, huh?
Yeah,
So that's how I know it's serious.
That's what I say. But that whole situation for me, I go back to getting home alive and what can you do to make sure that you get home alive. I don't think that he handled that situation poorly. Wasn't great. It resulted in him getting pepper sprayed, okay, which didn't have to happen.
Yeah,
he escalated the situation. The reason I don't think he handled it poorly is because he still made it home alive.
If it may have.
There was a way for that to go south
Real quick.
Yeah. So the reason I say, well, he didn't handle it poorly, but as I think about, is that an example that I'm going to show my son? After I saw it the first time, I'm like, this is an example that I am showing my son. He had his hand out of the window. He drove to a lit place. This is the example that I'm showing my son. And then I saw the other video and I'm like,
yeah, he could have done better than that. He could have done a little better than that.
Could have done better. But I'm glad he got home alive.
Which is the whole point of this show, of this segment. And I also want to talk about getting home alive from the cop's perspective. I was told a story when I was on the campaign trail because as you know, I'm a huge supporter and a huge fan of HPD.
Yeah.
Huge. They do God's work, and we are not perfect beings. But I mean, what they have to endure and encounter every day, it's a tough gig.
Yeah.
But you got to be held responsible as well for your mistakes. Yeah. Just because it's tough doesn't mean that you're exonerated from your mistakes.
No.
I heard a story it's called the Velcro story. I've told it a few times. I was talking to a spouse, and she told me every day she looks forward to hearing the sound of Velcro. I said, why? He said, because when I hear Velcro, that means that my husband made it back home alive, and he's taken off his bulletproof vest. So these are people that get up every single day. They don a bulletproof vest. They put on a taser, hopefully on their non-dominant side.
Yeah.
And they put their weapon on their dominant side, as it should be.
Yeah.
And they go out every day to risk their lives. And they ain't perfect people, Wrendon.
No.
And keeping that in mind, I think, is equally important, that the overwhelming majority of these people are out here trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And they aren't perfect. And I want to talk about that law enforcement officer, the one that, I can't recall her name.
Kim Potter. And
Kim Potter.
Yeah, I think
Let's go
need
into
to
that
talk
one.
about Dante Wright.
I think we absolutely can. And so I think, do I think that she made a mistake? Sure.
Yeah.
And she should be punished severely for it.
Yeah.
See, everybody we were talking about this the other day, about this
and
versus or.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody thinks that she made a mistake.
But there's always the but. Yeah.
How about she made a mistake and she cost somebody their life and she should be punished accordingly for it. Yeah. And she could make a mistake and you get punished for it.
Yes.
See, everybody thinks that if I agree that she made a mistake, which I think that she
then
did,
she shouldn't get punished.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
She made a mistake and she should be punished.
She absolutely should be punished.
Yeah. And there's a piece, and this is something, I think it's the nuance of our views of the world, Wesley. When you think about Dante Wright and Kim Potter, okay? You talk about misinformation and how these things end up happening, how the situation actually plays out. Okay? Dante Wright is driving around with an expired inspection sticker, with a warrant out for his arrest.
Yeah.
Okay?
And again, this is not grounds for him to, not get home alive. But,
No, it's not grounds for him to.
But this builds the story. It's context.
But it's context because the police officer pulls you over. You're out of the car. Officer Potter walks over to him.
Calmly.
To
at the time.
Continue the process of handcuffing him. He whips his arm from her, gets back in the car. That's when she deploys whether she thought it was a bullet or not, another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
The nuance in the way that I think people like us view it is, on both sides, there were some flight or fight reactions.
Yeah.
Okay? We can't say, oh man, well, Kim Potter should have known that she was pulling a taser. Like, how would you not know that in that situation? Just like I wouldn't say, well, Dante Wright should have known that when he's right around cops, he shouldn't pull his arm away from him and jump in the car to escape.
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Right? I believe, and it's because I choose to believe this, I believe that these people were reacting out of fear. Both of them. He was reacting out of fear because he didn't know what these cops were going to do, because guess what? He knew he had a warrant out too. He wasn't sure what was going to happen to him.
He didn't know.
He didn't know.
That's why he
panicked. She didn't know what he was going to do
when he jumped back in that car.
When he jumped back in the car and whipped his arm away from her. So both of them were in situations where it was fight or flight, and they did things that were both inappropriate.
Yes. Yeah.
So as I think about what can we do better to prevent something like that from happening again, from preventing the 20-year-old Dante Wright from not making it home, what can we do better? What can I do with my son whose name is Wright to not be in a situation like that?
So, Wrendon, what I also like about your description of this is that you left race out of it, because all this stuff is not always about race. Everything is getting spun into a race black man conversation until you look at the Hispanic officer and the half black, half Hispanic soldier.
Well, and
you look at this situation with Dante Wright. He's biracial.
Yeah.
And it was a woman. It was a
female. It gets spun up into gender as well. These cowboy cops like Joe Gutierrez. Well, there's a female cop that just shot a guy.
Right.
We're not in boxes, guys. You can't put people in boxes.
Everything isn't BLM.
Yeah.
Every situation and every circumstance is very different, and everything is nuanced.
Yes.
But if you buy what the media is pumping out to you, isn't it funny that you very rarely hear Officer Gutierrez's name? For the assumption that they want us to assume that it's a white cop.
Yeah.
I was watching the issue unfold with Dante Wright. Took them forever to say she or to mention her race or anything, forever. Yeah. Because they wanted us to assume that it was a white male cop. This has got to stop. Yeah. Because people are dying behind these lies and misinformation. Yeah. Just tell the truth, the whole truth. Don't play a part of the video, play the whole video. And then to those listening, if you're listening to this, don't believe the clip that the media sends you. Go back and watch the full thing. You have a responsibility for yourself to be an informed citizen. And in this day and age, you can be.
I like what you said about the idea of misinformation and what that leads to. Because misinformation causes us to perceive danger in situations, whether there's danger or not. Misinformation about how people feel about us or misinformation about how we feel about others. Knowing that process, there's a part of me that thinks if Dante Wright would have known what does happen if you have a warrant for your arrest and it's a misdemeanor, and if he would have known what that process would have looked like, would he have been fearful enough to try to jump in a car and then jeopardize a felony because he's doing that to go to jail for some real time rather than just
taking the L,
taking the misdemeanor? If he would have actually known and been educated about what that entails. And that's why we need to make sure that as a society that we're educating our youth on these fronts. I had a situation when I was in high school. It was the first time I was pulled over for driving while black. I was 18 years old. I had just turned 18. And I had just played a football game. Actually, I didn't play a football game. I was hurt that game of the season. We were playing at St. Pius. And I was coming back on San Felipe. We actually lost that game. It was not a pretty one. We no longer had our star running back, Wesley Hunt.
It happens, man.
Yeah. So I was driving back from
Thank you.
Yeah. He's a good one. He's one of the good guys.
Yeah.
I was driving back from the game, and I got pulled over. And when I was pulled over, I was terrified, because I watched the news like everybody else, and I was a newly minted 18-year-old, and I was terrified when I got pulled over. And the cop came, flashed the light in my eyes. Have you been drinking? No, sir, I do not drink. Sir, I'm keeping my hands on the wheel so that you can see him. Get out of the car. Yes, sir. Open the door. Got out of the car. Then proceeds to open my back door, shine his light, and search the whole car. Are you on drugs? And this was right by River Oaks, right? Mm-hmm. Not many of us are right by River Oaks. I was driving in a 1993 Jeep Cherokee, black. Are you on drugs? No, sir. Opens a glove box, looks in, writes me a ticket. Now, this was circa 2000, not circa 2003, because if the Black Album had been out, I'd have been like, I ain't past the bar, but I know a little bit, and know that you want to legally search my...
See how smart you are when the canines come.
I got 99 problems. But I was going through all this, and I was watching it, and quite frankly, I got home alive, okay? It was a devastating moment for me. I was about to go to my friend Craig's house, and I cried all the way home. I was about to go home. My mom told me to go to Craig's house because it was closer. I cried all the way to Craig's house. I really did feel like I was violated, right? Mm-hmm. And as I think about, I wasn't paying attention at all to what's the officer's badge number, what's this, what's that. I literally was trying to get home, and that's it. And now I'm in a position where as a parent, I hope that my kids think the same thing. Don't try to be a hero.
Yeah, don't be a hero.
Just try to get
Don't
home.
Be a hero. Get home.
And I lived in a day and age then where I just dropped it. They wrote me a ticket. I went to court, and the cop didn't show up.
Yeah.
And they dismissed the ticket. And in my mind, the worst thing was this whole situation, I got to pay this ticket. Let me tell you what, something like that goes down with my kids now, I'm not dropping it.
Mm-hmm. And you shouldn't.
And we live in a different culture where I think we would be encouraged to not drop that now. And I think that's a piece of our story of progress in the United States.
I agree.
Like that's shocking to me now. When I tell that story now, I'm just kind of like, wow, that's really crazy. I let that go?
Yeah. Different era, though, different time.
Different era.
It's a different era. It was a different time. And I think there's some context here.
And I worked for a lawyer.
Yeah. There's some context here, though, that, revisionist history is always doomed the future, because you have to understand that in that period, that's not how things were. There weren't any smartphones.
Yeah.
We weren't recording things. There weren't no body cams. There weren't. That took on a whole different meaning. What I do want to say, though, is just because now we have social media and now we have cameras that can record everything and we walk around here with supercomputers in our pocket also doesn't give you carte blanche to act like an idiot.
No.
It doesn't give you carte blanche to provoke law enforcement officers.
No. Nor does it give law enforcement officers carte blanche to Joe Gutierrez.
Exactly. And I think I actually spoke to some of my HPD buddies about Joe Gutierrez. Yeah. And here's what's really
HPD
funny.
Heroes.
They're the best. Like
best.
HPD, they are the best.
Yes, except for that guy that pulled me over in 2000.
Except for him. This is always a bad apple. But I called a few of my buddies and asked them about this, and they're just like, yeah. That guy is horrible. So that guy is absolutely ridiculous, and you got to literally police your own.
Yeah.
Like, that guy is slipping through the cracks, and these are other law enforcement officers that are talking about this. Even with the Chauvin case,
that's exactly where I was about to go with this.
You're seeing other law enforcement officers say, no, this is a bad dude. This is Corn Pop.
Yeah, it's a bad dude.
He's a bad dude.
Yeah.
Okay, and he wrote.
Yeah.
Corn Pop's
a bad dude.
He wrote with bad dudes.
Yeah. Well, to your point, and I'm going to apologize for saying to your point. We say to your point quite a bit. It's probably because we agree way too much.
Yeah, we got to disagree. We'll find something to disagree on.
We'll find something.
I wear socks.
Yeah.
I got to get it once a show.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But that was one thing that I've thought a lot about is we as a culture have lost the ability to even find common ground and connect on things.
Wow.
And the reason that's so pronounced in this specific situation, after the George Floyd video came out, you didn't hear cops saying that Chauvin did the right thing.
No.
Nobody did. Because it was so stinking obvious that it was wrong.
Yes.
Every law enforcement, every police officer or friend who had been a former police officer that I talked to was like, yeah, it was so bad.
That's ridiculous.
They were all like that, right?
That's ridiculous.
But somehow we didn't cover the fact that, yes, we have something that we agree on. Like, let's build upon what that agreement is. We just totally skipped that.
Yeah.
We skipped that part that the people who are trained to do this to protect us
are the ones testifying currently against him.
Yes, and they're the ones that are saying, like, hey, this isn't what we do. This isn't who we are.
Do you know what one of my...
And we don't want to listen to them.
Do you know what one of my HPD buddies told me? Because this happened in the middle of the campaign, and so I went up to headquarters to go, chop it up with him. And he goes, that guy, talking about Chauvin, he has no idea how much harder he just made all of our lives.
Huh.
Back to your point, 20 million traffic stops?
Yeah.
20 million? Overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. The reason why you don't know about them because you don't hear about them because they all go well.
Yeah. So what you've described too, that one person and how that one person as an example can set the tone for somebody's perception of an entire group of people, whether it be a religion, whether it be a race, whether it be a gender. One person can set the tone. See, we were fortunate enough to grow up in an environment where we saw that every single day. And we grew up in an environment like that because I knew that when my friends in high school invited me to spend the night, that I was probably the only black person that was going to ever sleep at their house.
Yeah, same here, man.
I knew that. And I knew that the way that I ate my food, the extent to which I was polite, the way I cleaned up behind myself.
I represented an entire race of people.
Yes. And I was always extremely aware of that.
And it's a way that's not fair, and I don't expect everybody to think that they have to take on that burden. You and I have chosen to do that. It's a choice that we've made.
I don't see it as a burden. I don't see it as a burden.
I see it as an opportunity.
It's an honor to be able to.
It's an opportunity, Wrendon.
Yes. And
the same thing goes for a myriad of different groups.
Yeah.
like oftentimes you might be the only person that walks through that door that is that particular religion.
Oh, I've never met a West Point graduate before. I've never met a Christian before. I've never met a person who wears no socks before. You guys are really cool. You're so chill and so good looking. And you speak so well. Maybe I should stop wearing socks.
That's really good. Nobody's gonna do that.
I mean, you never know. I mean, I've never met a person that has 15 degrees from Cornell. Great to meet you, Wesley Hunt.
Hey man, hey.
Yeah, and there's this piece of that is a piece of who we are, and that's something that I think about too, with each individual cop that has these terrible outings like we've seen, or each individual person who hits a cop or punches a cop or dives in a car and runs away. You're not only making it hard for yourself to get home, you're making it hard for a whole bunch of other people
behind you to get home.
Because let me tell you, our boy Gutierrez, and I say that dripping with sarcasm, he didn't say put your arms out of the window and stop the car because it was convenient for him to say. He said it because sometimes people just drive away.
Exactly.
Or sometimes people pull out guns
and start shooting at cops.
So he didn't just say that because
this does happen.
It's never been done before.
This happens.
He says it because that's the precedent that's been set. And so we need to be really careful with our actions as well, because we set the tone for the next generation.
Wrendon, every time I get stopped, or every time I've been stopped,
how do you get stopped so much, man?
So Wrendon, there was a phase of my life to where I'm not Wrendon. Like I got it. Like sometimes I do think race was involved.
Like 12 times.
Yeah, dude. In my life, all in, probably 20 times.
Jeez.
We pulled over 20 times.
I want to see the data behind swole people getting stopped.
Dude,
I bet they stop because they see their chest muscles. Those cops stop you, they say, "Hey man, you got any whey protein? Carry on."
That's why they pulled me over. I need some whey protein for my lift. I need a pump. You know, you look like somebody that got some whey protein in the back.
You got some in the back?
See, they usually look in my car now looking for drugs. They're looking for whey protein. So I've been pulled over quite a few times. I mean, I understand that in my life, holistically. Every time I get pulled over, Wrendon, I think about the next person that might get pulled over as well, all the time. I show so much respect. I can't use sir or ma'am enough in the sentence.
Yeah.
And my whole goal is I just want to go home. If you give me a ticket, that's fine for whatever reason. I am less concerned about arguing about that. I'll just take the L. Give me a ticket for nothing. I don't really care. I have been told on multiple occasions, sir, thank you so much for being so respectful. Now here's your ticket, but thank you.
Yeah.
I've been told that.
And that's what bothered.
And I say, thank you for the ticket, and thank you for keeping us safe.
Yeah.
This is, if you just kind of lead with a little bit more respect and understand that it's just a ticket.
Yeah. And that's what bothered me about the interaction between Lieutenant Nazario and
Gutierrez.
Joe Bam Bam Gutierrez. Okay. That's what kind of bothered me about that interaction. Because from Bam Bam Gutierrez, you see this guy who's in uniform, okay?
I just see Bam Bam Bigelow, and you know what? He does remind me a little bit of Bam Bam Bigelow.
Street cowboy, man. This guy, you see a guy who's in uniform. So there's a certain respect you pay to somebody who wears the uniform.
Now,
so that's what got me at first. It's like there's and it goes both ways. I'm getting there.
Yeah, I know.
It goes both ways. This is why I said the interaction bothered me. Because Bam Bam Gutierrez had every reason to treat this guy with an added level of respect, not even because he's an officer in the military, but because he is in the military. And Lieutenant Nazario had every inclination and should have had every inclination, because he is in the service of arms and because he does that for a living, to give the benefit of the doubt to the cop and not make it hard for him. Because we're all in the same type of combative service. Like, don't make it harder for somebody who's in that same type of service.
I also want to say this: just because you're in uniform and just because you're in the military doesn't give you the right to break the law.
No, it's not a chip on the shoulder. If somebody tells you to do something, like do it.
I kind of didn't really like the idea of he's like, I'm a military officer and you're treating me like this. So you're not getting treated that well as a citizen first.
Yeah.
You being in the military doesn't give you the right to not obey basic commands.
Yeah. Wesley.
And using that as an excuse either.
The problem is they both broke the unwritten code.
Yeah.
The unwritten code is you see somebody in uniform and game recognizes game. That's the unwritten code.
It's the smile, it's the wink.
Yes.
It's the I might give you a ticket still. But
it's the way of the samurai, man.
But here's the
It's the way, and they both broke the unwritten code.
They both did.
You're going to make my job harder because you're not just going to listen to me, and you're going to make my life harder because you're going to go around like Bam Bam Bigelow and pepper spray
people. That was absurd, though.
Yeah, it's like
by that time, by the time they had to,
it's like, dude, you could call his chain of command. He's in uniform.
Yeah.
You could say, let me talk to your company commander.
Yeah.
You clearly know a little bit of something about military ranks. I mean, you're listing off private specialists. You know a little bit of something about military ranks.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty ridiculous, though.
Totally out of control, man.
But that's what's so funny is when I talk to my buddies, they look at that, my HPD buddies, and my HPD heroes. When I like that.
Yeah. Those guys are heroes, man.
They saw that video, too. They're just like, yeah, that guy's a cowboy.
Yeah.
So I also think that what's happening too is there's this trend now that police officers are getting a little bit better about having the autonomy to police their own. Mm-hmm. Because with this level of scrutiny comes a level of responsibility for everybody that's surrounding the issue.
Oh, yeah.
So the most disappointing thing about the Chauvin case was less about Chauvin and the other officers that stood by and did nothing.
Yeah.
That was what was kind of more disturbing to me, which also tells me that there must be a systematic cultural issue.
Yeah.
That particular department doesn't have the autonomy or feel like they have the ability to police their own when they're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a cop issue overall or holistically. It's not a law enforcement issue. That's a department issue.
Yeah.
That's a regional issue.
Because that wouldn't happen at every police department.
No.
Not only, forget every police, that wouldn't happen in every unit in every police department. Exactly. And once again, that's what happens when we put people in boxes.
And we don't want to talk about the good guys, okay? Because there are certain units and there are certain departments that do one hell of a job.
Oh, with
their community.
Where that never would have flown.
You see them out there. I've seen these videos of these cops out there playing basketball with the community.
Yeah.
They know all the neighbors. They know everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, they are entrenched in the community as a whole. So when something pops off, people don't freak out. They're like, oh no, Officer Lewis he's good people.
Yeah. But that goes back to this idea of community policing and breaking down the barriers of the perceptions of law enforcement, right? That goes back to this idea. Because I don't believe in our culture right now that the perception is the reality. And the reason why I don't believe it, once again, I know the numbers about homicides and pulling people over.
The data doesn't back that up.
In the percentage. Yeah. I'll give you an example. I was pulled over, and this would have been 2014. I was driving from a retirement ceremony for the best commander who ever set foot in the United States Navy, Commander Chris Talon. Mm-hmm. I was driving from fantastic guy. I was driving from his retirement ceremony in Little Creek, Virginia, back up to Arlington, Virginia. Okay. And it was late at night. I decided to make the drive. He's like, yeah, you can stay here. I was like, I just kind of want to make it home. At the time, Esther was real little, so I was like, I'll just drive back home. And man, I was tired because I drove out there for the ceremony, went through the whole ceremony. I was tired, and I was nodding off at the wheel, man. Mm-hmm. Like completely dangerous, completely stupid, but I was tired. And I got lit up. Cop lit me up from the back, pull over, and the first thing I thought was, it's dark, and it's in Virginia. Rest in peace.
It's
by
dark.
the way, DMX. It's dark and hell is hot.
It's dark and hell is hot. I'm just kidding. It's
Rest in
dark.
peace, DMX. The first thing I thought is,
DMX.
It's dark. I'm in Virginia, which doesn't have the best reputation for these things, but and this was even before that happened in December of 2020. I'm dark. It's in Virginia. I just got lit up, and I pulled over. Cop is great. Like, hey, where are you coming from? Coming from retirement celebration from the. Oh, you're a Navy vet? Yeah. Hey, man, thanks so much for your service. Do you know why I pulled you over? No, officer, I don't know why. Man, you were swerving all over the place. I got a report from somebody else that called the cops because they were like, man, this person's intoxicated and is driving all over the road. They're like, are you tired? It's like, yes, I am very tired, but I am very awake now.
Yeah.
This is not going to be an issue moving forward. Well, where are you going? Arlington? Do you need an escort out there? Are you going to be okay? Like, yeah, I'll be fine. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Right?
I went in on a good story, too. Good job.
The interesting piece of that, in my mind, when he pulled me over, in my mind directly went to, oh my gosh, I need to be in a lit place. This guy is, what if they pull me out of the car?
Just wanted to help you.
That's where my mind was.
Just wanted to help.
But in reality, this person just wanted to help me. Statistically, there is a far higher probability that when somebody lights you up,
usually what
that
happens.
They're going to help you or inform you that you're doing something wrong, than that they're going to pull you out of the car.
99.9, like a very high percentage here that's going to be the likely outcome.
And I know that's hard for our culture to accept because it's hard for me to accept mentally.
But Wrendon, it's hard
when
for
I'm
our
getting
culture to
pulled over.
accept because you don't ever see the other side of that.
Yeah.
You're constantly inundated with everything wrong that every cop does in America.
Yeah.
One cop does something wrong in Virginia, they do something wrong up in Washington. It is all over you would think that happens every day in every community, and that's not true.
It's not true.
I got a good story for you, and then we'll end.
Sure.
I want to end on the high notes and highlight that.
You can tell the story about when you first saw me?
No, I'm not going to tell him about that.
That's a highlight right there.
No, it's not. It's the worst day of my life.
This is the most beautiful
It's
baby I've ever seen.
It's the worst day of my life. I think I slapped you.
You were trying to see if it was real. Is this real? This angelic face?
No, it's not. Went to a wedding in Iowa. Flew to Chicago. My flight got canceled that night. So I had to rent a car, and the next flight would have been in the afternoon of the next day, and the festivities were starting the next day.
Sure.
And I had a role in the wedding, and I needed to be there. So my flight got canceled from Chicago to the town in Iowa. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do the right. I gotta go help my boy out. I gotta go see him. I haven't seen him in a long time. I want to rent a car, and I'm gonna drive it. And it is like 11 o'clock at night. It's about a 2-hour drive from Chicago to the city in Iowa that I was going to. And I was speeding.
Yeah.
And it's 11 o'clock at night. I get pulled over, and I'm in Iowa. And I'm like,
uh-oh.
Again, your mind goes to this is not optimal. This is not an optimal situation.
Children of the corn or racist cop.
This is not optimal. Cop pulls me over, goes to the other side of the car. He goes, "Sir, do you know why I pulled you over?" I said, "Sir, I know, sir, I don't." He goes, "You're speeding." He goes, "Where you headed?" I said, "I just landed in Chicago." I said, "Here's my ticket. It got canceled, and so my buddy has a wedding tomorrow, and I'm just trying to get there before 1 o'clock in the morning." He goes, "Slow it down. Be careful. The next town is 2 miles up. It's a speed trap. So be looking out for that speed trap. Drive safely." Got in his car, drove away. How many of those are there that you'll never hear about? That's the overwhelming majority of the involvement and the engagement that we have with our law enforcement right now. And we are sitting here watching people burn our cities to the ground because of the mistakes of few.
Because those are the type of people that self-select to protect and serve.
They do. They do.
That's the DNA of the type of, are you going to get bad apples? Yes. But the broader DNA of people that choose that line of profession are people that are committed to service.
Yes.
I could say the same thing about the military.
Yes.
Do we have plenty of bad apples?
Of course we do.
Absolutely. But the broader DNA of the organization It's people that believe in a higher cause and they want to protect and serve.
That's why I want to give was her Officer Potter? Is that her name? Mm-hmm. This is why she was on the force for 26 years.
Yeah.
26 years.
Was the head of the police union in 2019 too.
Okay. So do I think she made a mistake?
Yeah.
Sure. Should she be in law enforcement anymore?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
No. She absolutely should not be in law enforcement anymore.
No.
Full stop. But let's
even
also,
the perception of all this endangers the people who she would serve with.
Of course it does.
It's probably why she resigned and did the right thing.
I mean, quite frankly, I mean, there was a way where she could have actually shot her partner that she was trying to help. I mean, that was a very dangerous situation.
Yes,
she
was.
can't handle it. So guess what? She shouldn't be in law enforcement anymore.
Yeah.
Does that negate 26 years of service?
No.
It shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
At least it shouldn't.
Yeah.
In our last ode, we're going to close on DMX. DMX. So we grew up listening to DMX.
Yeah.
You remember in the same black Jeep, bumping DMX. It's dark as hell, it's hot.
Yeah.
And what a complicated human being.
Mm-hmm.
What a troubled soul in many respects. I read a story about him relatively recently during COVID, during Bible studies. Now, does that clash with the DMX persona that we may know? Of course.
Yeah.
Does that clash with some of his lyrics that
It does not clash with "You've been eating long enough. Now stop being greedy.
Just keep it real, partner.
Let's give to the needy."
Yeah.
I mean, that was somewhere in Matthew too.
That was something like that. A derivation of that is in the Gospels.
I believe I've read something like that.
Matthew, one of the two. Whatever. Good job.
Yeah.
I want to end on the idea of we are all complicated people.
Yes, we are.
Can we please try to focus more on what makes us good and stop trying to tear us apart for our faults? We are not perfect. Officers are not perfect. They're not going to be perfect. Citizens are not perfect. We're not going to be perfect. If we can just admit that, then that's how we can start to heal.
Yeah.
Got anything?
I'm slipping.
I'm falling.
I can't get up. Get back on the street so I can tear up. I'm out. That's all I got. Smiles are contagious. Make someone's day.
You have a good week. Thank you.